Welcome to A Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and super excited today to have with me as our guest, Billy Taylor. Billy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. I heard you were coming to town, and I asked our friend in common, Doug, I was like, when he comes to town, can he carve out an hour to be with me at the podcast? Mm-hmm. And so Doug worked that magic out, and so thank you very much. You travel now all over the world, so really honored to have you. Had a video go viral recently. What was it, 12 million views in 4 days or something?
Uh-huh.
So if look it up on TikTok, and it's a really cool, great words of wisdom in that couple-minute video. But just before the show, we were talking, your leadership journey started as a third shift supervisor out of college at Goodyear Tire. Mm-hmm. And you stayed there for 30 years, eventually running the whole North America operation.
Yes.
So little bit of leadership experience under the belt. And then some years ago, you launched out consulting practice. You've written a book. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can talk about the book toward the end of the show.
Sure.
But just before the show, we were actually in another part of the building where you were speaking to executives and business leaders. And you said in there something I wanted to start with, be hard on the process so you can be easy on the people.
Yes.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. You know, often leadership is hard, and leadership takes courage. And most people don't like to be the bad person, the bad guy. When you establish processes around what are your standards, how you're going to operate, what are your daily management process, your leadership process, your leadership standard work? And so when I say be hard on the process so you can lead easy on the people, the process becomes the bad guy. Mm. You just hold people to that standard. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy to manage. It's easy to lead. It's easy to transform. I've been in organizations where I walked in and people, they weren't going to follow me. They didn't know me. Why should they? Mm. Right? So in their minds, that was negotiable. What wasn't negotiable was a process. Mm. And I was going to hold you to that process. And then at that term, after that, I earned your trust. Mm-hmm. I earned your respect. But you have to be hard on the process so you can lead easy on the people.
Mm-hmm. Let's unpack that a little bit more. So where's the process come from?
So within. I always say do it with the people, not to the people. Mm. We agree. I get that buy-in. This is the standard way we're going to operate. These are our operating processes and principle. Mm. So it's not just one person dictating. We agree and we'll align on what that is. And then everyone's held accountable for it. You're held accountable for your actions, for your behaviors. And at that point, that's where the process comes. That's where the standard comes.
Mm. And so one of the ways that you, and from what I understand, what you've shared with me and some of the audiences I've been in, you were involved in quite a few turnarounds, which Absolutely. Is one of the reasons management realized you're a guy that should be promoted. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about some of those turnaround stories, and then let's go back to this idea of how you use processes to turn those around.
Absolutely. One of my greatest experiences, that's what I want to call it. It was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Actually, they nicknamed FedNam. I mean, it was just it was almost a war zone. Mm. We went in there, they were hemorrhaging bad results. And when I went there, it was a unionized facility, 3 million square feet on the roof. It's a huge plant. And I show up as the plant manager. And so coming to that, I went to night shift, and this is before Undercover Boss, and I had the baseball cap, and I'm walking around, looking around the organizations, looking for scoreboards, the processes. Do we know the score? Mm-hmm. Do we have a process to let people know the score? Do we have a process for shift change? Do we have a process for how managers are trained and developed? Who owns that process? And so basically, there were so many secrets. The process was a secret. Mm. Everything was based off emotions almost, or tribal knowledge.
Yeah.
And so coming into those places, step number one is clarity. clarity around what is the process, what's the standard. And that's the first step.
Yeah, one thing you say frequently is you can't manage a secret.
That's right. That's right. And so if no one knows the score's a secret. Right? We talk about if you're going bowling, if there's a curtain there and all you hear is a loud noise, but you don't know how many pins you knock down, then what's your next strategy? Mm-hmm. It's hard to develop that strategy. Mm-hmm. Okay, the process is, listen, you're going to bowl. You're going to knock whatever pins you don't knock down. You need to know that. And then what's the strategy? And then I want to understand that strategy of what you're doing about it. Mm-hmm. Who owns what? And so that process, and you know, I stole this quote from Mom. Mom would say, listen, she says, in the absence of ownership comes blame. If people don't know what they own in the process, they're going to blame you. Mm. If it's not clear what they own, you're going to have chaos. Clearly put your standards around your process. You know, she says, Billy, if you're late to a meeting, don't call me after the meeting and tell me you're going to be late. That's an excuse. Mm-hmm. Call me before the meeting and tell me why you're going to be late. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. So the difference between a fact and an excuse is timing.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. You said do it with the people, not to the people. Mm-hmm. So as you're in Fayetteville and you're starting to turn this thing around, you do that initial undercover boss assessment. How did you, I mean, you probably had a way that you would do this, but walk us through that. Like what was your process to bring in processes?
So one is I had these touch points. And first of all, let's start with every day until I got to know the people. I needed to know what was the current state. Before I sought to change, I sought to understand. So doing it with the team. I had these weekly, we call them skip level lunches and breakfasts. I brought the union in and from every department, never everyone from the same department, because they could basically group up on me. Mm-hmm. I brought a representative from each department, so they were actually complaining about each other, not complaining. They were complaining to me now. Mm-hmm. And so what happened there was I had a process where it was like a mirror exercise. They were telling me about what was the current state. We don't have processes for this. We don't. Then the thing was, do we need them? Mm-hmm. And they all agreed. And so basically, they were the ones that were brought in to develop the processes. So I did it with them, not to them. Mm. So I could have easily came in and said, here's what we're going to do. And they would have rejected me. They would have rejected that argument. And you know, leaders, you know, the higher up, some leaders don't go and see. They kind of sit on their throne and so the buy-in's not there. You know, again, you're gonna hear me say my mom a lot because I tell them there's one thing I don't agree with what she said to me. And she says it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I believed that up until I got into corporate America. Okay. And so what I mean by that is the go and see. Or let people see you. And what I mean by that is I'm going to break it down. You know, I know a lot of people. I've been speaking all over the world. I know LeBron James. I used to live around the corner from him. Yeah. I know Oprah. I know Bill Clinton. I know Donald Trump. I know Barack Obama. I know a lot of people. I even know Michael Jordan. But I've got one small problem. They don't know me. Okay. So my point is, what are you doing to be known for? What are you doing when you go and see? How do you create those relationships so they know you? They trust you. And as a leader, when you create that, change happens. Right? We talked about it, cracking the culture code. Right? If you think of the egg, when the egg is cracked from the inside, life begins. A little chicken is going to come out of that. But when the egg is cracked from the outside, it signifies the end. Mm-hmm. Right? We're going to have that egg for breakfast. Mm-hmm. Okay? Leaders must understand how do they crack the code from the inside. That means doing it with the team From the outside is doing it to the T. And so you must be very self-conscious. It's not about me, it's about us. And I would actually say this once I got embedded into the system. Let's just look at reality. At some point, Billy Taylor's going to leave. You're here. This is where you want to retire. Fayetteville is not where I'm going to retire. Okay, I'm just being transparent with you. Okay? Who should own this more? You. And they would buy in. And the union kept bought in. And I remember it was the greatest compliment given to me by the union president. He said, you know what? The union president in Tyler, Texas warned me. Be careful. Billy Taylor will take your people. Billy Taylor will take your people, and he'll do it by giving them a voice where we think we are their voice. He gives them a voice. There's a difference.
That's good. We, so often you talk about this, do it to the people. And I think a lot of leaders don't even realize they're doing it to the people.
Absolutely.
They're just caught up in the day-to-day. One book was written, they call it The Whirlwind. Just that day-to-day, life is going on, and the leader doesn't realize they're doing it to the people. How did you protect, as you're moving up through the ranks, becoming president of North America, running North America, whatever the title was? How did you protect yourself from falling into that trap of almost complacency? Right, I finally arrived. I finally have the corner office. I've got the fleet of staff. I can, travel in first class if I want to, and whatever the perks were. Right,
corporate jet.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the things that I reflect on often is egos erode effectiveness. In athletes, you see it. People that are humble coming up, but once they get there, the egos cause them to self-destruct. One of the things for myself, it was what you know, but the danger is knowing what you don't know, not knowing what you don't know. And what I mean by that, I'm going to break that down for myself. When I came in there, I had to really seek to understand at every level, being a minority, just being, and I have these upfront conversations. And the advice I had to do is, when I'm listening to you, you're buying into what I have because I'm giving you that respect. I'm giving you that time. If a leader listens louder than he speaks or she speaks, they'll go a long way. So for me, no matter how loud my voice gets, I'm listening louder than I speak. And that's the thing that I often ask myself, even when I'm having dinner with someone. If I'm talking too much, listen louder than you speak. Therefore, when I can engage you in that conversation, it's powerful. And often leaders, when I say doing it to them, they don't want to ask the expert. Now, again, I have fun in everything I do. What's the expert often? Listen and you'll see. Or emotional intelligence. I remember asking my father, had my first date. Man, Dad, how do I treat her? Do I open the car door? What should I do? And Dad, I don't know how to handle this. Should I hold her hand? Dad, help me out. And all of a sudden I hear this laughter in the background. It's my mom. And I said, Mom, what are you laughing at? She says, I'm confused. She says, why in the heck are you asking him how to treat a lady? He don't know. Ask me. I'm the expert. All he knows is what I tell him.
You had a wise mama.
Absolutely. And so think about this here. Go ask the expert. Understand the conditions they're working in. Understand the things that they're dealing with. And if you can make their life simpler, I didn't say easy, simpler, And when they're in some sort of control, they'll give you anything you ask for within reason.
I ran into this phrase as a teenager, and it stuck with me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts around it. Simplicity is genius.
Mm-hmm.
True or false?
True.
Yeah.
True.
Why do you think that?
The opposite, right? When it's complex, I only have so much tolerance. Right? And I'm just wired that way, that human being, when it's simple, right? I almost engage. Simplicity, we crave it. Think about, and I'm going to age myself growing up, right? Before the internet age, before the cell phone age. Let's talk about life then, right? If I went on a trip, I had, dad's driving, mom's got the map, right? If I wanted to find out if where's a auto mechanic or a restaurant, I had to go to this big book called the Yellow Pages, right? If I wanted to take pictures, if I didn't have that Polaroid, I have to go to the drugstore to develop those films. If I wanted to now send you a letter, it took 3 to 5 days for me to send you that letter.
But you had to get an envelope, stamp, pen, paper.
That's right.
And go to the post office.
Simple now. It's simple now. And you know what? Life's moving so much faster. Now, I'm not saying that life's better now than it was. It's just more convenient now. I happen to have left my cell phone today, in the hotel room. And I'm almost having anxiety, right? My lifeline is sitting in the hotel room, right? And because I have a certain computer, my text messages are still coming through my laptop, or I'd be totally disconnected. Okay, but the fact that now communication is simple, and I liken it to, it's destroyed some businesses. For instance, the music business is not as lucrative as it used to be. Right? People sell cassette tapes.
Unless you're Taylor Swift.
Right, unless you're Taylor Swift. That's right. Now
I think she did all right with that last tour.
That's right. Yeah, but now they have to make their money on tours versus record sales. And so simplicity, most businesses fail because of complexity. Right? Too many initiatives. I think you and I were talking over dinner last night when we talked about 40X. Right? And trying to measure too much, trying to overcomplicate it instead of streamlining it, focusing on the mighty few. And so I do believe simplicity is a key to success, but it has to be the right things.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just go simple to be simple. You have to be simple, and it's really clear, right? I call it deliberate clarity.
Yeah.
On what it is you want to accomplish, how you're going to accomplish it. That's important.
So on deliberate clarity, let's go back to Fayetteville. You're in Fayetteville. How do you get that deliberate clarity?
This is funny, you said. So I show up, and I've got clear instructions from the CEO and the vice president. And he says to me, Billy, that place is making 31,000 tires a day, and we're hemorrhaging money. We need 36,000. And the people don't even know, and profitable. Yeah. And you have to control your costs. And exactly what he said, I want free tires. He says you're at 30, 31, 32, I want 30, 36, and I don't want to spend another penny for them, so I want them free. Okay? If that happens, Billy, this will help North America. So I need to go. 36 is what they needed. I needed 38 so I could PM the equipment. I could idle some of the equipment and do some work on it. So let's go back to deliberate clarity. How did I get that message across to everyone in the plant? You know what? Ask the people. You know what? Once somebody suggested football jerseys. It was football country. Bought them custom jerseys with the number 38 on it. Put the Union logo on one sleeve, the company logo on another sleeve. Put the back of the jersey, instead of a name, the front of the name said Fayetteville. The back of the jersey said the choice of the customers, associates, and our community. Long story short, that was, I want to say, 2,500 jerseys. My boss says, why is he spending that money? It's a waste of money.
They're hemorrhaging and he's off buying football jerseys.
That's exactly what he said. Well, we walked in with a 6-month strategy to get him to 36. First month, we're up at 33. Next month, 34. Next month, 35. Next month, 36. Next month, 37. And we're hitting it. But let's go back to the beginning. Everyone in that plant, including the janitor, could tell you what it was we needed to accomplish. Now, I held these daily meetings, breakfast and lunch, every day, 5 days a week, with everybody explaining to them the purpose, why we needed the 38, why it was important to our associates, our customers, and the business. And so they rallied around it. And, you see that jersey at Walmart, in church, in choir rehearsal. You see it at every football game. That jersey was all over Fayetteville. Now, even if you gave it away, if you were a grandpa and you gave it to your grandbaby, what's the first question that grandbaby's going to ask you?
What's this mean?
What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can explain it, you're bought in.
Mm-hmm.
You're bought in unconsciously. But more importantly, once we gave them with that deliberate clarity, we said, help us with the how.
Mm-hmm.
Again, deliberate ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So with deliberate clarity to deliberate ownership, right? Because why? In the absence of ownership comes blame. And when leaders and companies build these strategies, but people don't know what they own in the strategy, then they blame you.
Mm-hmm.
I have no dog in the race. I don't have a dog in the race. We talked about yesterday. When 2 people owns the dog dies. Why? I thought you fed the dog. No, I thought you fed the dog. No, I thought you fed the dog. No, I thought you fed the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the dog's dead. Why didn't you feed the dog? Well, we didn't have a process that tells you feed the dog on Mondays, I feed the dog on Tuesdays. However, but you are the main keeper of the dog. And so leaders fail at that when they build their strategies. There's no one owning the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a document that go in their laptop or go in their desk drawer, and then it's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't manage a secret.
Yeah, and people like to throw around that term ownership or accountability a lot.
Mm-hmm.
First question for you, do you see those 2 words as the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Ownership and accountability. Are those synonymous in your world, or is there a difference?
Yes, there's a difference from a standpoint. Accountability is a subset of that ownership piece of it. When I own it, the buck stops with me in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I own it. When I'm accountable, I own a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
But just like we did an exercise this morning, we had people standing up at the board. We put up a visual management board. I brought up a group of strangers, and then I gave them a sticky note. Says, put your name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, put this on the metric that I said you own. Immediately when that happened, their whole the one lady, woo, that was green, right? And I tell the audience, watch their body language
Mm-hmm.
around ownership. Now, if I'd have just says, hey, come on up, you're accountable for this.
Yeah, good point.
Right? You're accountable for this. They'd have just went along.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be careful. I remember, and this is a true story, and that ownership piece, it's not only implied. When you have a management system, identify who owns what in that system, not who's accountable for, who owns it. When they own it, then they become accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember someone asked me that around me, responsible. And this poor fella, bless his heart, I was doing orientation. And I was the one saying, hey, we want responsible people. We want to hire responsible people. And so fella was like, I don't think he's being sarcastic. A little simple. That's what I'd say he was. And he says, raised his hand. I said, yeah. He said, Mr. Taylor, I'm your guy. I says, what do you mean? He said, my last job, everything that went wrong, they said I was responsible for it. So I'm responsible.
That's why I'm not there anymore.
That's why I'm not there anymore. But you won't be here because I'm responsible. So you want to say, what do I own?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
The so you coach leaders
Yes.
almost exclusively.
Yes.
Not that you're not willing to get down in the weeds, because you are. That's who, where you found success was being able to communicate at all levels and understand and ask questions at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
But do you ever have a leader say, well, how do like, Billy, I need you to hold me accountable, or if not, tell me how I make my people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard that kind of language?
Oh, quite a bit. I've had leaders say exactly what you just said. Billy, hold me accountable. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be fun. And I'd say, why? Why is it going to be fun? For me, is you clearly don't know what you own.
Mm.
For you to say that to me, you don't know what you own. So by holding you accountable, I'm going to show you. And so we sit in meetings and I just look at him and say, so why do you accept that?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, what? I says, he just put up an action item. You have no way to track that action item and follow up. And then 2 days later, when he owed you that action, he never brought it up or he glossed by it and you didn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know what you own. So I switch it on them. And then I says, from now on, when I'm coaching people, I'm going to give you a script. And for a week, I just want you to follow the script. Right? And I think Toyota Kata, Mike Rother is a friend of mine. And it's that one, right? He asks a series of questions repeatedly around deliberate practice. Right? What's your current state? What's your desired state? Let's talk about the gaps.
Mm.
And if leaders can do that with their people, my goal is to have 0 accidents.
Mm.
Where are we at? We've had 2 accidents. What's the root cause and what are you doing about it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Billy, you know what? We're going to have this training. We're going to have it by Wednesday. Okay, put it up on the action register. Wednesday comes and you don't say anything. Who's at fault? The leader.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you accept that?
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of my leaders, his name's Bart Raymer. Bart's a vice president of Charter Steel now. And we were recently at an event, and Bart says, you know what? That guy's the hardest guy I ever worked for.
Talking about you.
Talking about me. He said, but he was the most engaging. He said, I still call him. He says, he only met with me for 15 minutes. That was the longest 15 minutes. And he said, he had a process on, I knew what I own. He'd go right to the gaps. And he wanted to make sure I understood the gaps and what I was doing about it. But more importantly, his ability to praise was off the chart. Was off the chart. And he says, it's like that old coach that could wear you out at practice, the Nick Sabans, Belichick. He says, but at the end of the day, before he let you go in that locker room, he put his arm around you and said, you understand what I'm saying? Do you know why I'm doing this? And if this doesn't happen, we don't win. He says, you're the first one in the locker room the next day. You're the first one in the locker room the next day. And that's what I coach leaders to say, what are you accepting? What do you own as a leader? Mm-hmm. Just because you're a leader doesn't mean you stop owning and just do all delegating.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put your leadership system in place.
Mm-hmm. You said in the session earlier today, what you accept, you can't change.
That's right. That's right. A standard isn't what you write down. Or policy isn't what you write down solely. After you do that, what you walk by is a standard. What you accept.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I originally saw this clip And the person says, what you're not changing, you're choosing. It's that simple. As a leader, if you're not changing your safety systems and safety standards, then you're choosing the one you have. You're choosing it. So when I'm coaching leaders, I mean, they love it. It's tough at first, but then it's that mirror exercise, right? Because what you accept, that's your standard. If you're in a relationship, what you accept, you can't change. Right? I'm not going. Listen. I may go out to watch a game with a group of friends, and listen, I'm a grown man, but I know the standards. My wife has some standards. I'm not coming home at 8 a.m. Right? And normally, when I get in the car, I call her and let her know I'm on my way, so she knows I'm safe. It's not about control.
Yeah.
It's not. It's about that respect, that standard, and that's how, right, a happy marriage. Right?
Yeah. Well, it's also compassionate in both ways.
Absolutely.
For you to text her is compassionate, so she doesn't worry.
Absolutely.
And for her to receive the text means she actually cares that you're still alive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Which is always novel. When I don't know about you, but I've been married 37 years, so I still like my wife liking me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we her and I have these standards, and we pass those on to our children. My daughter asked me a question the other day, and she says to me, she asked me, have I cursed in front of my parents? I says, have it slipped before? I said, yes, and I was horrified. She said, why? I said, out of respect. I still call her yes. I still say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. If I get on the phone with my mom right now, she'll say, hey, Billy Ray, did you do this thing that I asked you to do? I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I have it. She says, okay, baby. Okay, mom, I love you. Talk to you later. Billy Ray, I need you. Yes, ma'am. And I remember my son looking at me one day, and he goes, you still say that to your mom? What I say to you, and I'm just a kid? And I remember telling him, absolutely. And it's that making people feel visible. They'll make you valuable. When you show that type of respect and dignity, most often it's reciprocated.
Yeah.
It's reciprocated. My son, and when I do my keynotes, people cry when I do the last slide of my son. I says, leaders fall into the trap that numbers are everything. And they get so focused on measuring what matters. And they think that's just the biggest part of the equation. Well, it's not the biggest. It's impactful. But my son brought this to my attention, and it's through his actions. Every day I take him to the gym to shoot. And I want him to shoot at least 50% from the three-point line. And they were back-to-back state champions at St. Vincent St. Mary's High School. But I remember the last day before the second state championship, I had to drop him off, and he shot his shots. And I said, send me a picture. I have a board meeting after 10, and I want to know how you did. Measuring what matters, like good managers. He sent me the pictures, and he had a sad face. So I immediately called him because I thought something was wrong. He said, Dad, what's the problem? I shot 80%. Let's look at your face. He said, Dad, that 80% didn't mean anything because you weren't here. He says, Dad, I think you leaders got it wrong. Good leaders measure what matters. Great leaders embrace the fact that everything that matters can't be measured. Because, Dad, I'll never remember all the games you came to, but I know I'll never forget the two you missed. And he says, Dad, you know what's been most impactful for me as a young leader growing up? It wasn't the presents you bought me. It was your presence you showed me. That's what makes the difference in leadership. That's what makes the difference in transformations. And so with that being said, again, setting those standards, living to those standards, people will follow what you do before they follow what you say. in every situation. And so for me, it's about living those examples, but being accountable.
Yeah. What your son said is huge. And I think one of the things I appreciate about the younger generation, they get dumped on a lot by the older generations.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I appreciate about them is they do seem to be more aware of the need for these things that can't be measured.
Absolutely. Because they live in a world of instant gratification, instant feedback. You look at social media now, I mean, something happens, you know about it within seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's different when we grew up, right? It was snail. You may have heard it on the news. You may have gotten some word of mouth. But today, if something happens within 30 seconds, you know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it can be depressing.
Mm.
It can be depressing. I've seen a couple of things happen recently, whereas that's not so good. But the world's different, right? We talked about it last night, right? My son, he may like Frank Sinatra, right? Or he may like Michael Jackson, but he doesn't want to hear it on an 8-track tape.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not streaming it, he's not trying to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we move to that next level? My children are my mentors today. They coach me on so many things, from the way I dress to, it's...
Which, by the way, you look sharp.
Oh, I appreciate it. I credit my kids. They keep me even from my casual look. All right, they don't want me looking too young, but I ask them, and when I ask them, they feel good about Dad asking them.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because you remember, listen louder than you speak.
Mm-hmm. That's good. The one thing that you said, I'm looking at my notes from earlier, you said there's a question every leader should ask.
Mm-hmm.
What's that question?
What do you need from me? When that question is asked, you actually sit up and take notice, no matter who you are. Now, let me break this one down even a little, unpack this a little further. I didn't say, what do you want from me?
Mm-hmm.
I said, what do you need from me? Now, listen, when I go out to eat, I want a steak. I need to eat. They're two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the leader says, so what do you need from me? Just your mind, you kind of, you're caught in your tracks. And now you change your perspective. It's just like a stranger I knew this morning. I need you to move all this equipment. I need it done in 5 minutes. And I'm telling them what I want him to do. And then I'm saying, go do it. And he gave me a line, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, get out of my face, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But when I said to that same stranger, okay, I need you to move these speakers. I need you to move this. I need to get it in this room in 3 minutes. What do you need from me? I've got people here. I've got resources. What do you need from me? He quickly changed his tone and says, here, and he says, we can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
We can get it done. Mm-hmm. So the question specifically a leader should have in their, I'm going to say their portfolio is, when you're in that situation and you've got to get something done real right, it's urgent, what do you need from me? You'd be amazed at what comes out of their mouth.
Mm.
When I went to Fayetteville, I remember saying, we have to go from 31,000 to 38,000 tires in 6 months. Before you say no, what do you need from me? And I remember that. And I remember on month 2, Keith Hamilton, who's now the vice president of operations at Georgia Pacific, Keith says, hey, Billy, can we talk? I'm like, yeah, he says, I want to take you on a walk. He says, Billy, there's these 5 tire machines sitting out here with tarps on them. We were told to tear them out by an executive. I says, continue. He says, and now we're building these, what we call low margin tires on high margin equipment. Bill, if I put these 5 machines back in, I can get 5,000 tires a day off of them. I can also put high margin product on those other machines, and we can increase the margin across the whole portfolio by 5 to 7%. And it won't cost you any other additional money. I'm going to eliminate overtime. That's what we did. Where did that come from? The leader, when I said, what do you need from me? Because you couldn't get that just pure productivity, right? My cycle time was this. Based on my cycle time, the most I could get on any given day was 37. With those 5 machines, I had time to PM equipment. But going back to that specific question, what do you need from me?
It sounds like you spent a lot of time with people.
Yes.
There's a lot of leaders that I would tempted to say through no fault of their own, but what we choose, but there's a lot of leaders that by default end up in, well, I got to get this done, whatever this is, right? This report, this analysis, this PowerPoint presentation. I got to get this thing done.
Yes.
So I don't have time to talk to my people.
Yes.
I heard it said at the Global Leadership Summit a couple of years ago. I'm trying to remember the guy's last name, but I believe his first name was Malcolm. He said, if you don't have time to do one-on-ones with all of your direct reports, at least, and I believe he said weekly, but let's just say regularly, he said, in my opinion, you need to get out of leadership. How do you feel about that?
Agree. Right? And it's kind of what we talked about this morning, the touch points, your doors, wars, and mores. Leaders must have those touch points. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying you should have the door, but
which is your daily
operating review, weekly operating review, and monthly operating review. The monthly operating review is critical because that's saying we're going to calibrate on our strategic direction. It's the after action review. Okay. Your weekly, your war, that's that touch point. So I can understand where you are, understand your gaps, understand your needs, how I can enable you. But that door, that touch point, going back to what Bart Raymer said, and he said that 15 minutes, now notice what he said, specifically, 15 minutes was the longest meeting of his day, not in time, but in mindset. And he says, you know who was after me? And Billy Taylor strategically did this, was his executive assistant. And she'd be looking at me if I went over my 15 minutes as if you're robbing me of my time. Not like the college professor didn't show up. But it's that touch point. Good leaders must give people their time. One, you want to calibrate. Now, I think it's important to meet the whole team, but then create this here process. But every organization I've been in, we won the Nobel Prize, the Shingle Prize in Lawton, Oklahoma. Same thing. Bobby Wayman, and I still talk to these guys today who's now, Bobby's running some oil company. He would say it to me, I've got to get FaceTime with my team. I didn't have that FaceTime with my team. Billy, that's what I've realized been missing. I was so prepared trying to get to this meeting instead of focusing on my team. Right. And it's, when people have a tour, I remember we had a big tour and I walk in the plant and the plant's looking immaculate. And I get my team, we're walking and they said, so Billy, what do you think? The place has never looked better. I says, well, I want to thank all of you for a great job, but I'm disappointed. And they said, why? I said, you never cleaned up this good for me. I'm a jealous boss. And we all got to laugh about it. And I said, this should be the standard. How do we keep it? And they did. They created it, and they never forgot it. And they said, when you said, I am jealous, this person only comes here once a quarter. And so,
Mm-hmm.
but it was theirs. It's theirs. So those touch points, good leaders have touch points.
Last question, then we'll start to land the plane. Everything you've shared, is it only work in big companies?
No, smaller companies. This all started in a 54 people plant in Kingman, Arizona. I went to that plant. I was the first African American to ever walk in the plant. And I was going to be the leader. Now, just the demographics of Kingman, Arizona is 0.7% African Americans in the whole town. Okay. And I was the first to walk in, and then I'm the plant leader. And we had a chaotic environment. And what I say that, it was the same principles used to transform that plant that we use to transform the larger plants. Mm. Just the numbers were smaller. Mm-hmm. People are people. Mm-hmm. We think, feel, and do. Mm-hmm. And great leaders tap into that.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. That's good. Tell us a little bit about your book, The Winning Link.
The Winning Link is it's just it's a blueprint. And so I'm not a consultant. I'm a practitioner. So it's 30 years I lived it. And when we first started writing the book, I think we rewrote the thing 3 times. I would let my friends that lived the stories with me, and they're like, no, this is how it happened. Mm-hmm. This is real. But it also talks about what didn't work and how did we overcome it. So it's not just this theory of what it should be. And so we've said it's a blueprint. Mm. It's a blueprint to transformation, right? And so we look at it, and I was just asked, Billy, why did you choose the winning link? And I said, if you look at the cover, it's people making the links. Mm-hmm. It's people making the links. And those are the winning links to your enterprise. How do you tap into that? And the book shows you how to do that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're back in San Antonio, I would love to have you back on the show. We talked about how to know if you're winning or how to win. Mm-hmm. I'd love to. The other thing direction we talked about going was how to lead. Mm-hmm. And maybe that'll be part 2 one of these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I thank you for having me on the show.
Sir, thank you for your time. It was a great honor to have you here today. And hopefully we get to do this again and stay in touch.
Absolutely. I plan on coming back.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.